I started my email newsletter journey when I was writing emails on Upwork for $5 an hour while working as a gym instructor at the YMCA. Then you probably remember that day, COVID happened. I was kind of made redundant and couldn't go back into work, and I was forced to make money online, chose freelancing, doubled down on email newsletters, and looking back, it's been a hell of a ride. Since then, I've heavily invested into coaching, mentorships, programs, courses, whatever. And I've actually helped my clients make more than 15 million in sales with email. So everything from drip sequences, email launches, deliverability, all that stuff. I've made so many mistakes along the way. And what I know now, if I could go back and teach myself, hey, how would I start over again and do newsletters differently? This is a video I would create for myself. I'm going to present to you a 10-step roadmap that I would give to my former self in order to block out all the no's and just focus on what really gets results and moves the needle with an email newsletter. So my first piece of advice to you, you won't find on YouTube, you won't find on ChatGPT because it's inconvenient. And I actually front loaded this first answer. So if you could walk away with anything, it's in this first few minutes. And that's this key lesson. Learn to monetize a small list before deciding to grow. If there's just one thing you watch this part here. So to demonstrate this, please don't drop this. Demonstrate this, I've got a 20,000 person email list in the big jar and a 2,000 person list on the small jar here, the small glass. And this cup here is going to be the revenue cup. We're going to demonstrate how much money we can make from a big list if this represents $1 per subscriber. So we're going to pretend that this list here did a $40,000 promotion, right? So this is how much money they're making per subscriber. They're basically their efficiency. All right, 1, 2. Now, as you can see, that was highly inefficient with what we've got here. And with this list here, it's 2,000 people. In order to hit 50K or $25 per subscriber, we have to sell 10 packages of $5,000. Now, this is very achievable. I've done this for multiple clients, as you can see on the screen here. The key part is though, look at this efficiency. 1, 10. Okay, we're less than halfway. 21, 22, 24. All right, here we go. This is $25 per subscriber from just a 2,000 person list. So as you can probably see, knowing how to monetize a small audience is the key to understanding how to monetize a big audience. However, most of the YouTube advice you might see is how to grow a massive following, how to grow a massive subscriber list. Whereas I'm looking for like, how do I make the most money from like the smallest number of people as possible? This is a key lesson that I didn't pick up for a while, and that's not trying to chase for massive growth or subscribers or whatever, because it's all about efficiency. Like if I can get more dollar per subscriber, then I'm going to be much more successful. But for whatever reason, everyone seems to have it backward. Let them be. And as a creator, how do you actually monetize a small audience? This brings me to principle 2, step 2, and that's understanding that direct response marketing is kind of like the building blocks of your business and for your newsletter. So knowing all the steps to take someone from basically a complete stranger to, hey, yes, I trust you, I'd like to take your money, is very different than what I'm kind of seeing on YouTube right now in the newsletter game. I'm seeing lots of videos, 10 to 12 minutes, how to take it to like $10,000, $20,000, $40,000 a month. And you're like, that's like step 13, not step 1. For example, when I was a personal trainer, if someone couldn't squat below parallel, the first thing I wouldn't say to them is, oh, okay, great. The first thing we're going to do a Turkish get-up. And a Turkish get-up has lots of different skills combined. You need shoulder stability, you need a hip bridge, you gotta brace your core, you gotta be very aware of your body. If I just showed someone, hey, this is how you do a Turkish get-up, they're gonna do a pretty sloppy job just piecing all these skills together. But if I was that same PT from many years ago and I was to isolate those skills and progress someone from like very easy to much more difficult, I might start with, hey, let's do a squat with a band first. And then let's squat with a kettlebell. And then let's squat with a barbell next. So if you're thinking about pulling the trigger on your newsletter, I'd 100% view learning the ropes of a newsletter just like a newbie would be learning the ropes of fitness. But instead of the building blocks for a Turkish get-up being like brace your core, stabilize your shoulder, know how to squat, in the newsletter game, the building blocks and the skills for success is direct response marketing. So you got to understand and know how to do some of these core skills. The difference between a bad offer and a grand slam offer. How to structure a basic sales argument. How to write conversationally and use persuasive principles to get people to take an action. How do you research your ideal client and then write content that resonates with them so that you can sell them that content. And then there's all these other little skills that you'll probably have to pick up along the way. Like, how do I build a landing page? How do I connect a payment processor? It's like, oh, people aren't getting a receipt after they buy something. How do I create an automation for that? The way I got better at direct response marketing, I don't think people probably do this anymore, but it was really old school. It was looking at people's funnels that worked and sort of deconstructing them and figuring out, oh, like they use this headline. Sometimes I'd even get emails. I'd write them down by hand and I'd number them saying, this is the persuasion principle they used. And while I know it's really tempting to just want to hand this off to AI because it probably does a really good job, the key thing is though, how do you know if AI is giving you a bad output? So now we have the base of our foundation. The next layer on top of this is going to be mastering the simple newsletter funnel. You got to know how it works, how you take someone from someone doesn't know you, giving you their email and wanting to give you money. The newsletter funnel is pretty simple. You create content, you send them to a landing page. That landing page has a lead magnet on it, which is a valuable resource or a tool or something like that. Then you send them down a welcome sequence. Then you're going to send them more regular daily emails or weekly newsletters, however you like to put that. From there, I'm collecting data. I'm seeing what works with those newsletters. That's why I like to do daily. I don't know why people do weekly, frankly. Then once I've got a lot of that data back, I'm going to be like, wow, this made some sales. Where else can I put this copy? And so this system, it feeds itself. It's pretty simple. Then the newsletter topics that do well, then feed your content, which gets more people in the door, which gets more people to come to your landing page, lead magnet, and the cycle continues. So this is a really simple email newsletter funnel. And if it seems like a lot, especially for a beginner, it probably is because you just have a lot of stuff to learn. But if I could go back in time and give myself a bit of a checklist of what I would need to do, this is the checklist. First, I would start out, hey, who do I want to serve? Like, who's my ideal client? Because if I can figure that out, then I can figure out, hey, like what problem would be able to solve for these people? Because that's your offer. Now, once I figure out my offer, then what am I going to talk about in my newsletter? So I like to work backwards. So that's why we're starting from who we're serving, what's the offer. The next step below that is what we're going to talk about in the emails. And typically, we're going to talk about problems that your offer solves. So in terms of what to talk about, I'm going to give you a list here of some of the top objections to overcome. This is just a cheat sheet of some of the better objections that I found really work to convert if you address them inside of an email. Once you have a general gist of some of the top objections we need to overcome, we need to understand how we're going to get people onto the newsletter. And to do that, we need a lead magnet. Now, for me and my avatar, their ultimate success is, hey, like I'm making a lot more money from YouTube and I don't have to create lots of content. It's with my newsletter. But the problem way before that, let's just say their starting newsletter is, how do I sell in my emails without being salesy? And so my lead magnet is going to solve that one specific problem. And once it solves that one specific problem, it gets people a little bit closer wanting to work with you. And of course, on brand, I actually created a lead magnet that's very similar to that, like how to sell without being salesy and actually how to create more income from your YouTube traffic without having to create more videos. If you want that, it's in the link description below. Second last part of this simple newsletter funnel, or on the landing page for your lead magnet. This is where someone hands you an email address. And I like to think of the content and the landing page, they're kind of like cousins, they're best friends, right? Because the content, it gets them really excited about solving the specific problem. Think of it as like handing a baton to someone in a race. So if you do a poor job and it falls and whatever, then people are going to drop off. But you do a really solid exchange with the baton and people just run off with it, it's going to be super smooth. The way I like to do lead magnet landing pages is pretty simple. Big benefit headline, 3 bullets, a button to grab the thing. The less copy, the better. Bonus points if I can get a phone number, and even more bonus points if I put a little checkbox that says, hey, like I actually want to receive emails from you, because then I can clean out all the crap emails from like bots and everyone else who actually shouldn't be on the list. Then, of course, the content that comes before the landing page is answering a specific question to that one thing that your magnet solves. So you kind of see how this all works in one nice cohesive circle. So now is it making more sense how I said don't focus on making money at the start, like focus on the principles of, hey, take a stranger and turn them into a buyer. Now, obviously, not everyone's going to be really good at creating a newsletter funnel. So this is the best hack I can give you right now. Spend money to funnel hack other newsletter funnels. The mistake I made early on was thinking, why do I need to spend $400 to buy a product I'm not going to use? But rather, I should have probably come from the mindset of, hey, this person's crushing on content. They're spending $1,000 plus a day on ads. If I get this product and I go through their newsletter funnel, there's a good chance that they have highly optimized this for conversions, for results. Why wouldn't I just spend the $400 to figure that out? So one thing I really recommend, this is something I have as well, is something called a swipe file. You just create your own email address and you go put in all the people you really like, the creators and everything else. You create different labels of who they are, and you just sign up for people's lists. So now that you've got a clear strategy on how some of the top creators take someone from opt-in all the way to repeat lifetime customer, what I would do if I would go back is learn customer journey automations much, much sooner. Here's how I view customer journey automations. They're there to really help you out, because let's just say you're going to a suit store. Like recently I had to buy a suit, and I didn't just walk in there to a self-checkout, right, and just get some baggy ass thing. Like, I wanted a good suit. So obviously I'm not just gonna be left alone. Someone's in there, they're greeting me like, hey mate, how you doing? Oh, you got in a suit before? Like, what's your missus wearing? How big's your shoes? Do you know what style do you want? Or do you want some advice on the style? So being solicited for the sale is actually really beneficial, especially if I'm spending more money on a product. Now, if you think about customer journey automation, it's kind of the same thing, right? If someone clicked on a landing page for a product 6 times in 2 days, there's a pretty good chance that they've got some questions about the product that me just sending the regular broadcast emails or whatever is not going to really help. Like, it might make some difference, but if someone's checking that page out a number of times very frequently, they're on the fence. This is where you can really scoop up sales. And if you just focus on like, what's the best writing I can do, you're kind of missing the point here. Now, the other reason why I absolutely love customer journey automations is that you pick up a lot of data in the process. Now, personally, I was really afraid of emailing frequently because I thought people would unsubscribe. But my mentor at the time really astutely pointed out, hey, look, if they opted in, solve a problem, they likely want to hear from you, right? Why are you only sending once a week? Like, for example, if you had a good first date with someone, why would you ignore them the rest of the week? You would be texting them throughout the week in anticipation for the second date. And unlike taking the time to hold space to text someone you really like back, with newsletters, you can batch this ahead of time. On top of the benefit of taking away the pressure of not having to publish all the time, you can actually curate exactly what people need to see in order to build a relationship with that new subscriber. And even better, this is my favorite part. If you know what sells because you've done the testing with a customer journey automation, you just put that into the sequence. Like, if it's worked well in a broadcast email, I would put that into a sequence. For example, you have a broadcast newsletter, it's a YouTube or a blog post, and it does really well, and you notice, hey, actually getting a lot of clicks. This would be a really good idea to put in a automation. It's basically your audience telling you, hey, this is really helpful. If we go back to the analogy of the suit person helping me out with a more expensive thing, if you can figure out what content people need to see in order before they buy your thing, it's like that suit dude. It's going to solicit the sale on your behalf. So this part is actually, it's going to be hard for people to swallow. If I could go back, I wouldn't be afraid to tackle the techie deliverability stuff much more earlier on. Because if they're landing in junk or they're landing in spam, look, no one's going to see them. So it took me 3 years to sit down and learn about DKIM, SPF, DMARC, promo tab, seed testing accounts, scrubbing, like all this like stuff that just sounds like jargon. It's a little intimidating first. But once I saw the results happen for clients, like with John, we took his email open rates from like 10% to 24%. And in the first 60 days, he made a lot of sales in the process. You start to realize that, I probably shouldn't really ignore this deliverability stuff. Now, the way I like to think about deliverability is like kind of like learning to jumpstart a dead battery or change a wheel of a car. Like when you first buy a car, you're probably not going to be doing those things for a long time. And when you're starting a newsletter, you're going to be small, you're going to have small list size, you're probably not going to run into deliverability problems. Because once you start growing that newsletter, you're going to start making more offers because you're going to get more confident in yourself. More people are going to be like, what's this spam? That's normal. That always happens. You don't have the right records in place, Google's going to slap you. They're going to be like, why'd you do that? I'm going to ban you and not reward you by putting your emails into the spam tab. So just like learning to jumpstart a car, change a wheel, it's probably a good idea to first learn basic deliverability when you're starting out with a newsletter. If you need some tips on how to do it the non-techie way as well, check out this video here. Now, if we're talking car analogies here with a newsletter, most people wouldn't buy like a sweet Mustang and just leave it in the garage all day for no one to see it. Like, it's why people get it, right? So why would you not collect proof from your audience and then practice using it out in the real world? Now, if you're running out of testimonials and social proof, I ran into the same problem too when I was managing my first newsletter. At the start, I remember taking all the screenshots, all the testimonials, and after about 3 weeks of pretty much using them all up, I stupidly asked, what else do you have? And they said, no, that's it. So I had to get really good at creating my own proof. Sometimes it would be a YouTube comment, or someone asked a really good question in a Facebook group. Or I'd go back through a coaching call, find the wins, and ask for permission to use that as a snippet, as a piece of content. And what I would do is I'd create my own bank of proof, and then I would say, okay, what objections would this one piece of content solve? Like, how many ways can I spin this one piece of proof? So what we found was that people didn't respond well if we just kept sending case study after case study in a newsletter. What we found was that the more we use these snippets of social proof, the more people would actually reply to us when we asked a question and give genuine, personal anecdotes from their own life. And if they're doing that, it's a really good sign of list health. And if I could also go back to my old self, the golden rule with proof is you have to ask for permission, even no matter how small it is. And I've learned that the hard way. Made so many damn mistakes. Another really good habit I would highly recommend if you're trying to make more sales in your newsletter and not be pushy in the process is to get into the habit of talking to past customers. I kind of feel really old saying this, but 5 years ago when I started, there were no AI tools to scrape Reddit or anything like that. So I would ask the old school way to my clients, hey, can I talk to your past customers? Now, here's a reason why talking to customers is the gold standard. And I know this from experience. This process works so well that the first time I was working with Wes McDowell to help sell his course, he asked me to interview, 5 people for his course, the Profitable Website Launchpad. Since then, I've interviewed over 25 of his students, and he's gone from making 2 to 3 course sales a week to 2 to 3 course sales a day. And he uses those customer interviews on his webinar, which converts, this is crazy, at a 5% conversion rate on an evergreen webinar. Talking to your customers directly, they literally have all your marketing there. There's no guessing, right? There could be gaps in Reddit, especially with AI. Your customers have all your answers for your marketing. Because they're real people, and with the permission, of course, these are assets that you can collect as an interview, right? So you can use them on ads, landing pages, videos, sales pages, emails, you name it. So if I was starting out today, I would definitely not throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, AI scraping is the way to go. Why the heck do I need to talk to a customer? I can just scrape this information 10 times faster than talking to a customer. Now, look, I get that, but as a creative business, you are the business, right? It's your personal brand. People are buying into you. They want to be closer to you. And being authentic with your marketing is why people want to be close to you. So if you've been on the fence about talking to past customers, I would definitely reconsider this. And the cool part is if you actually do that last step, doing the customer research interviews, this next step is going to make your life so much easier. And that is to use the data to help you save time and thinking. Basically, it's me being lazy. When I'm signing up with a newsletter client, typically I would be batch writing like 2-3 weeks ahead of time. I'm talking to the customers, I'm talking to the founder, I'm talking to the salespeople, I'm trying to figure out what works best. And like most people, staring at a blank screen, it kind of gets a bit hard to think of stuff. And I remember I was working with this one client. I had to write a lead magnet, and I was a bit too lazy to think of something new. So I'm like, this lead magnet from client A worked. What if I bring it across to client B, change out some of the avatar specific stuff, and then publish it? And then what do you know, it actually really worked. Now, the only reason why it worked was because the avatars had some overlap. They were kind of similar, but the key thing is I used data to help make my decision. So if I was managing my first newsletter again, I would be throwing all the spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks as fast as possible. Man, I'm beating myself up that I didn't do this, but I would have been like, oh man, this was a really good email on time objection. I'm going to put this into a folder for time objections. Oh, lots of people clicked on this email and the email was all about like overcoming money objections. I'm going to put this into the money objection folder. Then that way, whenever I want to write a promotion or I've got another batch of emails I want to write, I'm not starting from scratch. Like I've got all the fundamentals of what works in these folders. And it's so much easier than constantly thinking, what am I going to write about when you just have basically a library of what's proven to work. Now, the probably most important thing here is that you can't do well with this unless you're having fun. The most fun way I found to say the same thing a million different ways and not make myself go insane is to wrap a fun, entertaining story around a piece of content. And consistently with every single email list that I've managed, the more I share about my clients' personal lives, the more sales we made. For example, I would wrap up really boring topics like you need to be a better leader and delegate with stuff like this. And this is a real story that we used from one of my past clients, Troy, where he was having a midlife crisis. He bought a drum kit. He was playing in between Zoom meetings in the hope of getting his band back together. And then we spun that around to, look, in order for me to do that, I have to be able to know how to delegate. And in order for me to delegate, I have to be a really good leader. So how do you do that? That's just a little tiny example of how do you be fun with your emails. The question is, how do you be fun and profitable with your email newsletter at the same time? A profitable newsletter is incomplete unless you have these two critical components that have actually nothing to do with the content itself. This video here shows you how to combine those so you have a fun and profitable newsletter.